Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Chen Ming searched on the webpage. When his eyes swept through the various options, he suddenly saw an option for a custom psychic weapon that Bai Quan had made for him some time ago. It requires 1,000 contribution points, and the materials are provided by yourself. I don't know where Bai Quan, a non-psychic, got this thing from before. In addition to choosing this customization, you can also actively purchase some unique weapons and equipment with psychic properties on the website. They all seem to be things found in the ruins of another civilization. For example, psychic fluctuations can be converted into weapons with physical killing properties. And by injecting mental power in advance, using the special structure in the device to create a layer of mental shield and other equipment. However, compared to these things that Chen Ming can replace with his own ability, he is more concerned about another kind of psychic melee weapon with the characteristics of spiritual stone. The category of melee weapons is quite special. If there is not enough coordination, melee weapons are definitely not as good as long-range weapons such as guns. But what is strange is that the prices of several melee weapons that Chen Ming sees now are higher than those of some other weapons with psychic properties. And the price is not for the kind of psychic weapons that only have the name and gimmick of psychic weapons, but can only be used as auxiliary, but the real psychic weapons that can transform psychic fluctuations or mental power into output means. Chen Ming took a rough look at the introduction, and these melee weapons were actually found from another civilization. The introduction said that this is not to embed the spirit stone into the psychic weapon, nor is it to grind or forge the spirit stone into some simple cold weapons. Instead, the effect of the spirit stone is completely integrated with the weapon. This means that the spirit stone and the psychic material that constitutes the weapon have excellent compatibility. It is not like Chen Ming simply embedding the word of madness spirit stone into his Ming now, but a real combination of the two. If the user has a very good compatibility with this kind of psychic weapon, then the increase obtained from the psychic weapon will definitely increase exponentially. Even if the compatibility between the user and the material properties of the psychic weapon is not very good, it is definitely better than other psychic weapons with randomly embedded spirit stones. When Chen Ming's Ming was first acquired, the basic mental power increase given was 1.1 times. After the inlay of the word of madness spiritual stone, the effect reached 1.3 times. Overall, it doesn't look much. The reason is that the designer chose materials with relatively neutral and peaceful properties to make psychic weapons for Chen Ming. After all, Chen Ming has not undergone a systematic physical examination until now, and the nature of Chen Ming's psychic power is still uncertain. Therefore, the choice of materials must be based on materials with a wide range of applications. But because the nature of the word of madness spiritual stone inlaid by Chen Ming is relatively intense, the superposition of the two is not much. But if the psychic weapon itself is made of materials with relatively extreme properties, or Chen Ming also chooses to inlay a relatively ordinary spirit stone, then the superposition effect of the spirit stone of the same nature is definitely extraordinary. This is just inlaying. If you want to achieve a perfect fusion effect, then the material properties of the two must be almost identical. The final amplification effect on the user can be imagined. The exaggerated amplification alone is enough to make people envious. And there is another special thing. That is, this kind of psychic melee weapon really has modern and even futuristic technology. Because the name of this melee weapon that Chen Ming likes is the single molecule crystal gold sword. Single molecule means a single molecule in the blade. And crystal gold is a special grade material. A sword made of special grade material has only one molecule in the blade, so the cutting strength seems to be really exaggerated. Wait a minute. Chen Ming was busy thinking about the purpose of this thing and whether its function was powerful, and he almost forgot one thing. Hasn't his psychic power been able to involve the microscopic field for a long time? He has been able to control atomic-level materials for a long time. That is, he can also make a single-molecule sword. Chen Ming raised one hand. Metal liquid condensed in his hand out of thin air, and a sci-fi long sword exactly like the one on the website appeared in his hand. Except for the slightly different materials, because Chen Ming did not have crystal gold, he could only use other special grade materials instead. And there was no nanorobot inside the handle. it was a single-molecule sword. Bai Quan, who was sorting out the teaching plan next to him, saw this scene and immediately asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm looking to see if these things are worth the price." Question mark. Bai Quan put down the computer and walked to Chen Ming's side. He looked at the terminal in Chen Ming's hand and the sword that had already formed and said, "Then you made a single-molecule sword yourself?" "Yes, but I can't fuse the psychic material with the spiritual stone. And there seems to be another problem." Chen Ming turned the tip of the sword to point directly at the ground, and then let go. It did not sink directly into the ground as Chen Ming had expected at the beginning, leaving only the hilt outside, but after piercing the ground for about 1/3 of the length of the sword body, it was fixed in place at an angle. Its blade was blunt. The blade of the monomolecular sword is pure monomolecular. After having a terrifying cutting ability, it also means that the blade is extremely fragile. Now Chen Ming knows what the nanorobot in the hilt is used for. It is used to maintain the blade to ensure that the monomolecular structure of the blade is not damaged. It can only be said that another civilization really used some unexpected things in unexpected places in design. Chen Ming bent down and pulled out the sword on the ground, raised it to the previous position and released it again. And this time when the monomolecular sword fell, Chen Ming continued to use maintenance psychic energy on the sword. This time the sword body successfully sank into the ground completely, leaving only the hilt outside. Seeing this scene, Bai Quan said, "So what is your conclusion? Is it worth it?" "It's okay. It's really worth the price for others, but it's a bit of a loss for me." After all, Chen Ming can replace both the monomolecular and nanorobots by himself. The only thing that is valuable to him about this weapon is the fusion of the spirit stone and the psychic weapon. And this nanorobot gives Chen Ming a feeling of using a circuit board on an arrow. Although according to the technology of that civilization, there must be a reason for the existence of such a thing, and he himself can think of it. For example, once any psychic with super strong charge and mobility ability gets this monomolecular sword, its strength will definitely be acceptable. But if there is no need for close combat, or it can be guaranteed that it will not be close to the enemy, then it is hard to say. Chen Ming generally does not take risks. The chance of being hit by someone in the face should not exist after having a prosthesis. So although Chen Ming does think that this kind of thing that completely integrates spiritual stone and psychic weapons is good, it is not worth it if it is to lose money. Just get an ordinary monomolecular sword and use it. Chen Ming passed the psychic monomolecular sword and looked at other things. Soon, two unique weapons appeared in his eyes: the mind shotgun and the mind confusion gun. The size of a rifle, the appearance looks black and green, and the shape is simple enough to barely look like a gun. Their effect is also simple and crude, which is to directly release mind pulses. One pulse will directly cause a mental shock, knocking people unconscious, while the other pulse will interfere with the consciousness of the person hit. It will cause the brain of the person hit to be confused and attack other people around indiscriminately, just like the mental pulse generators that the mechanical race used to throw around. However, the manual says that this is a weapon for riot control, not lethal, and it looks a little kinder than the things used by the mechanical race. But the introduction also says that this thing has a chance of burning the brain due to mental shock, and it is hard not to wonder whose riot it is suppressing. In short, Chen Ming has got the device that emits mental pulses, so he doesn't need it now. He probably took a few glances and continued to look at other things. Chen Ming found that many things on this website looked good, but either he didn't need it, or he already had a substitute. So Chen Ming finally looked at the material area after reluctantly marking a few things that might be useful. Materials are more useful to him than other things. At least he can freely make materials into what he needs. And the value of various psychic materials ranges from a few contributions to hundreds or thousands. The most expensive ones are basically special-grade materials with psychic properties. For example, the psychic crystal gold material used to make the psychic crystal gold single molecule he just saw. Even though crystal gold is only in the middle and lower reaches of special materials, the value of 1 kilogram is about 1,200 contribution points. There will also be different price trends depending on the nature of the psychic energy. The more positive the emotion, the higher the value, and the more extreme the value. Among them, The most valuable is a crystal gold material with the material property of ecstasy, and the price is even 3,000 contribution points. No wonder that single-molecule sword is so expensive, and the material also accounts for a lot of it. Then Chen Ming can't buy this thing even more. After resolutely thinking about it, Chen Ming continued to look. In addition to these materials that can be mined naturally, the others are some materials obtained from psychic creatures. There are skin, flesh, bones, blood, etc. After all, the psychic energy of psychic creatures exists in itself, so the whole psychic creature is valuable. It's just that Chen Ming suddenly realized that he didn't seem to have seen many psychic creatures until now, let alone powerful psychic creatures. He had seen powerful creatures before, such as the Queen of Insects, the Aurora Wind Spirit, and the Phase Beast before, but there were not many psychic creatures. If he could come across a few of them, he would definitely try to capture them. Chen Ming looked at the list of these biological materials, and all kinds of strange thoughts kept flashing in his mind. And one of these strange thoughts suddenly hovered in his mind. Are the materials produced by Yin Xiong considered materials for psychic creatures or other materials that can be mined? No, what he should be entangled with is not the nature of psychic materials, but the purpose of these psychic materials. Chen Ming suddenly looked up at Bai Quan and said, "Let me ask you a question. Where do the things that are exchanged on these websites come from? Many of these materials are supplies seized from various wars, and some are sold by psychics on their own initiative, and then they are allocated here. Does this mean I can sell this kind of thing?" "Yes, there is a special person to purchase it. It's over at the Psychic Research Institute of the headquarters. I'll go back and find out for you. What do you want to sell?" "I haven't thought about it yet, so don't worry. Can the things I get in exchange for contribution points be resold? If you are short of money, you can indeed sell it. There are also marks in the introduction on the website. If you have marked it, you cannot sell it. If you sell it, it is against the rules. But if you don't mark it, you can do whatever you want." Bai Quan randomly clicked on something on the terminal in Chen Ming's hand and pointed at an inconspicuous little hook. Chen Ming nodded. This also seems to be a way to make extra money. Can psychers trade these things internally with each other? Yes, but just like reselling, only those who have checked the box can be sold casually, and those who have not checked can only be sold among psychics of official forces such as the military and government. And I heard that the things used by you psychics are generally traded face-to-face. It is said that you are very particular about whether things are suitable. You will only trade after face-to-face confirmation. If it is not suitable, it will be terminated. Chen Ming nodded again and said, "Similar concepts do exist. Just like when he was condensing the source of spiritual energy before, it all depends on fate whether a material is suitable or not." Just before Chen Ming was about to continue asking questions, Bai Quan said, "However, we currently have only 3 psychers in the branch, including you, and only a little more in the headquarters. It is not easy to trade now." "Oh. It seems that if I have the opportunity to go to the headquarters, I can try to trade something with others." Chen Ming lowered his head again. He looked at another thing that interested him, fairy tree species. However, when Chen Ming saw the price, he immediately ignored it. The value of a fairy tree species is 20,000 contribution points. Although this is a raw material for making many medicines and plays an extremely important role for psychics, Chen Ming really doesn't have that many points. Now he could only temporarily mark this tree species, and by the way, he raised Yin Xiong's value in his heart. After all, there were people who were willing to exchange the fairy tree seedlings for Yin Xiong before. Then he turned his attention to another thing that was more important to him that he could probably afford now: artificial enlightenment nerves. Chen Ming is now only a little bit away from the key node. If he can use this spiritual nerve, he might be able to cross it directly. The value of an artificial spiritual nerve is 10,000 contribution points. It is equivalent to exchanging a special merit for an opportunity to become a psyker. Chen Ming suddenly raised his head again and looked at Bai Quan. Bai Quan had already sorted out the lesson plan and asked, "Have you finished reading? You can start class now." "Wait, there is another question. Where did the spiritual nerve you gave me before come from? This should be something that can only be obtained by psychers with special skills, right?" Bai Quan recalled it for a moment and said, It's not something that only psychics can get. It was given to me by my superiors when I was promoted to Major General, but I never used it, so I gave it to you. I'm not interested in betting on this low probability. I might as well use it elsewhere to exchange for some resources. As you know, I got a lieutenant general instead. Chen Ming suddenly frowned slowly because he suddenly thought of the past. Are the chilling nerves for sale? Can anything at the special level be sold? And I heard that under normal circumstances, when this kind of artificial spiritual nerve is implanted in a non-psychic person, except for slightly activating the implanted person's mental power, it can actually be said to be completely meaningless. A special merit can only be exchanged for something with such a strong gambling nature. Is it really okay? Bai Quan looked at Chen Ming in surprise and asked, "Where did you hear this?" The bosses sighed. "Oh, that's actually quite different. What Wuan is talking about is the spiritual enlightenment nerve that is sold to external parties, which is different from the spiritual enlightenment nerve that we actually use to give us the probability of becoming a psyker. Let me put it this way. After the spiritual nerves sold to the outside world are implanted, the probability of awakening spiritual energy through this spiritual nerve is 0%. 0%? Yes, it's that low. Those who seem to have awakened their psychic powers after being implanted with spiritual enlightenment nerves are 100% people who can awaken their psychic powers in the first place. As for whether it's worth it to have special merit in exchange for this, I can only say that this is a choice, and you don't have to choose it. Besides, these 10,000 contribution points are not only spiritual enlightenment nerves, but also supporting things. Bai Quan once again recalled the various precautions for using this spiritual nerve that had been explained to him. First of all, if you want to implant the spiritual nerve, you must first go to the Fanchao Research Institute and undergo a physical examination to confirm your physical condition and confirm your mental state. Then, after a period of active training to ensure mental activity, it is finally absorbed under the protection of various supporting medical facilities to ensure the safety of the absorber. Seeing Chen Ming's expression as if he wanted to say something, Bai Quan said directly, "Not everyone is as fierce as you and can eat chilling nerve alive." The Fanchao Research Institute is the department that mainly studies this thing. The rules they set must follow their side. The directors of the Psionic Research Institute of our 14th Legion can only go to them to study. If you think about the full set of services provided by the Fanchao Research Institute, they are worthy of special honors, right? As for the spiritual nerves bought by rich people, that's fine. Just find a local psychic research institute and implant them. As long as you don't torture people to death, you can do whatever you want. This is also a way to recover some additional assets from wealthy people. Chen Ming suddenly couldn't understand again and asked, "Recover assets? Isn't Fanchao Research Institute an independent research institute?" Of course not. It's a research institute directly under the Empire. Belongs directly to the Empire. Bai Quan explained to Chen Ming, the government, the army, and the ruling party of the Empire are three different concepts. Generally speaking, those who are directly affiliated with the Empire refer to those who are directly affiliated with the ruling party of the Empire. I know. I just feel a little surprised. You know my hamster, right? I know. I don't know where you picked up the pet rat in Fanchao's laboratory. Rue Mu Xing. Chen Ming answered Bai Quan's question and said, "The problem lies with the hamster. I didn't expect that a laboratory directly under the Empire would study this. I always thought that it was because the Fanchao Research Institute is an independent research institute. Study some weird stuff." Forehead. Bai Quan also suddenly realized that there was something strange about it and said with some uncertainty, "Maybe someone within them took the time to work on this thing." Chen Ming just felt a little strange, so he asked casually and didn't get too entangled with Bai Quan on this matter. Because there is another thing that he is more concerned about. Is this 10,000 contribution points fixed? You know my situation. I don't need anyone to help me. I can absorb it myself. I can't ask them to check me. So I don't want these things. Can it be cheaper? Bai Quan couldn't give an answer for a while. How about I go ask it for you? Can't you make the decision? The matter of psychers is not only an internal matter within our 14th Legion. All the resources of psychers are integrated by the entire Empire, and it involves the Fanchao Research Institute. This matter really needs to be asked. Okay, let's talk about this later. Chen Ming threw away the terminal and sat down in his usual lecture position. It can only be said that the number of things on this webpage is still very large. At least he can't finish it now. He can only mark the things he is interested in first and see if there are any remaining contribution points that can be exchanged later. Now he has other things to do. 3 days later, Bai Quan came to Chen Ming as usual. But today was the day that he informed Chen Ming in advance that he was going to another place. Bai Quan pushed open the door of Chen Ming's room as before and saw Chen Ming, who was ready to leave at any time. How are the preparations going? Chen Ming patted the suitcase beside him and said, "It's all in there. I also stuffed a copy of the synchrotron core log I gave you yesterday." Nearly a month was wasted for a psycher's first-class scientific research merit. I am very curious whether Lu Wei dares to take this responsibility. Bai Quan smiled and patted Chen Ming and said, "You want him to die? Okay, let's go and drive your boat." Half an hour later, Chen Ming and Bai Quan, along with several guards and Bai Quan's secretary, boarded the Stardust-class ship that Chen Ming had not sailed for a long time. When boarding the ship, Bai Quan repeated the process of their trip. "This time we are going to go to a prosperous star field called Meteor first, where we will meet with Lu Wei and the others, and get the data in your hands first handed over, and then go to the colony location. Should we jump over directly or walk slowly?" "Of course, walk slowly. You can jump over there and maintain it for free. If you arrive early, you still have to wait for others. Why not let others wait for you?" Also, Chen Ming quickly set the route and arranged other accompanying personnel. Then he took Bai Quan to his room on the Stardust level. After using psychic energy to separate a classroom and study room, Chen Ming continued to start today's class. Even if you go out to do errands, there are some things you can't stop doing. The Stardust class travels alone in hyperspace and is expected to arrive in the bustling star field where it can detect the value of data in 3 days. However, only 1/3 of the time on the road has passed. Just during the day the next day, the sense of danger that had not been touched for a long time suddenly stung Chen Ming's brain. The prosthesis on the Stardust stage is about to face danger. Chen Ming's face changed. He put down all the work at hand on the main body and focused all his attention on the prosthetic body. Bai Quan, who was teaching Chen Ming in the classroom at this time, noticed the change in Chen Ming's expression. Just as he was about to speak, he saw that Chen Ming in front of him was instantly covered in a layer of nanosuits. And he couldn't help but have an extra layer of protective clothing on his body that gave people a sense of security. What happened? Chen Ming did not respond. He closed his eyes slightly and concentrated on feeling the source of the danger perception. But for some reason, the sense of danger this time didn't point somewhere clearly. It's not a threat that completely covers the entire Stardust, nor is it a threat that's too far away. It's just that there's no way to clearly sense it. The source of danger is changing, and it seems to exist in every corner. Suddenly, a subtle spiritual energy fluctuation was suddenly noticed by Chen Ming. Psychic. Chen Ming immediately moved closer to Bai Quan. In front of the psychic, Bai Quan, an ordinary person, is extremely vulnerable. Only by his side can he find a way to protect Bai Quan's safety. Chen Ming immediately tried to use the spacecraft's three-dimensional imaging to locate the intruder, but there was no sign of other people's activities on the three-dimensional imaging. And all the monitoring equipment on the spacecraft could not find any trace of the intruder. Chen Ming could only release a large amount of psychic fluctuations around his body, constantly trying to sense the source of the psychic fluctuations. But just before he found the intruder, he suddenly noticed that the overall temperature of the spacecraft was rising and the entropy was increasing. "It's Hui." Chen Ming reminded Bai Quan again, and his other hand reached to his waist. There was a purgatory core in the bag on his waist. At this moment, on the ceiling above Chen Ming's head, in the dark place where the lighting equipment did not completely illuminate, a dark hand wrapped in black fog was slowly reaching out. This hand held a long sword emitting psychic fluctuations and swung it violently towards Chen Ming's neck. Ding! The sound of swords colliding rang out in the room. The source of this sound was that Chen Ming raised the single-molecule sword he had just made above his head, blocking the extremely dark sword held by the black mist arm that stretched out from the ceiling. It's fine if you hide in the shadows, but you're still thinking of sneaking out after coming out? What do you think I am? A blind man? His eyes stared at the black mist arm. This black mist, it was you who took Hui away last time, right? I didn't expect you to dare to come to me again. As Chen Ming spoke, he thought about the effect of the psychic power of this psychic. And the black mist arm extending from the relatively dim corner that was not fully illuminated by the lighting equipment on the ceiling basically showed that this black mist was based on the existence of the shadow. In other words, when Chen Ming and the black mist arm exchanged their swords and were in a stalemate, all the lighting equipment of the entire Stardust class suddenly started at the highest power. The lights were fully lit, and the dazzling light almost completely turned the entire room into a space of light. The black fog had nowhere to hide, and the black fog arm and the pitch-black long sword were instantly wiped out by the strong light. Chen Ming's arm loosened, but he didn't relax at all, because the psychic fluctuations on the invader did not disappear, but were still wandering around. Even this psychic fluctuation was getting clearer and clearer, as if the black fog psychic was approaching here in person. At this moment, under the chair next to Chen Ming, there was a small area that was not even a shadow, but only relatively dim. Another black fog arm stretched out from it, also waving the pitch-black long sword and slashing at Chen Ming's calf. But Chen Ming never relaxed at all and always paid attention to the surrounding environment. As soon as the black fog arm appeared, he stabbed the single-molecule sword into the ground and blocked the pitch-black blade. Even if the intensity of the light is high, as long as there is something in the room, there will be shadows in the room. This is inevitable. After being blocked, this black fog arm and the pitch-black sword blade were quickly annihilated by the strong light. But this time, its annihilation speed was obviously much slower. The psychic must be on the ship, nearby, and may even be hiding in his room. Maybe this arm that looks like black fog is part of his body. However, it seems that the ability of black fog is also limited. Otherwise, it can just make a hole in the shadow of the human body at the position of the heart. Obviously, the appearance of the black fog arm must have the most obvious limitation, the space for movement. However, Chen Ming can't guarantee that this black fog psychic will not be able to do this in the future. So if there is a chance, he must kill the person here directly to avoid being targeted by such a psychic. Chen Ming made up his mind and immediately began to dismantle and move the things in the room. Clear the room and try to leave only him and Bai Quan in the room. In this way, he only needs to pay attention to the shadows under their feet. While Chen Ming was cleaning the room and erasing the black fog arms that sneaked from various shadows, his other hand did not stop moving. The purgatory core was activated in the small bag he carried with him, and the ability of entropy control was extended to the entire spacecraft. The entropy of the Stardust level is gradually stabilizing. However, what surprised Chen Ming was that Hui seemed to have only raised the entropy of the Stardust level at the beginning, and did not continue to hedge with Chen Ming and psychic energy. It was completely different from the last time when he wanted to use the volcano to assassinate him. There seemed to be something wrong here. Although Chen Ming was a little confused, it did not affect his intention to find a way to kill the Black Mist psychic. This person was more dangerous than Hui. He had to think of a way to force the person out of the shadows when he could not use various common means to find the person. Chen Ming thought of this method quickly. His mental power suddenly wrapped around Bai Quan's body and condensed into a layer of mental armor. While protecting Bai Quan from being hurt by the Black Mist psychic, it also protected Bai Quan from being accidentally injured by what he was going to do next. At the same time, Chen Ming also made a complete set of protective clothing for the accompanying personnel who were in other rooms and did not understand the situation, and directly threw them out of the Stardust level and went to find them later. After wrapping Bai Quan with a lot of mental power, a palm-sized device suddenly appeared in Chen Ming's hand. This is a portable mental wave generator. Zhuo Jing used this thing to amplify the mental pulse effect of the negative spiritual stone to cause chaos. And now, Chen Ming wants to use this thing to locate the position of the Black Fog psychic. As for the specific positioning method, Chen Ming took out his revolver, Ming. When he asked the prosthesis to run to the 14th Legion, he deliberately asked the prosthesis to bring Ming. and on Ming, the crazy language spiritual stone was inlaid. The crazy language spiritual stone was quickly removed from the gun and stuffed into the mental wave generator. After the magnification of the generator was adjusted to the maximum, Chen Ming pressed the start button without any hesitation. The frenzied spiritual energy fluctuations, accompanied by the horrible whispers, instantly filled the entire Stardust class. Even though Bai Quan was protected by Chen Ming's mental shield, some frightening illusions suddenly flashed before his eyes. He immediately closed his eyes, took a deep breath to adjust his state, and tried to stand not too far from Chen Ming. He would not cause trouble for Chen Ming, nor would he fail to rescue Chen Ming in time. The battle between psychics was definitely not something he could intervene in. At the moment when the frenzied psychic fluctuations appeared, Chen Ming was calm to the extreme. He had long been accustomed to fluctuations of this intensity, and these frenzied psychic fluctuations could not cause any effective interference to him. But the situation was completely different for the Black Fog psychic. In Chen Ming's perception, the psychic fluctuations that permeated every corner of the shadow around him instantly vibrated violently and dissipated after the vibration. All these psychic fluctuations related to the black fog that filled the surrounding environment were due to this vibration. At the same time, he heard a painful cry. "Found you!" Chen Ming turned to the direction where the sound came from. In this direction, the internal structure of the Stardust level instantly melted into liquid metal, paving a way for him to the direction of the sound. At the end of the road, there was a figure wrapped in raging black fog. A large number of high-intensity spotlights were directly created by Chen Ming nearby, and the black fog figure was immediately completely submerged in the ocean of light. The black fog continued to dissipate under the light, gradually revealing the appearance of the psychic. But the psychic was wrapped tightly in black clothes, with only a pair of eyes exposed, and the specific appearance could not be seen at all. But it's okay. If you can't see it clearly, don't look at it. It doesn't matter what he looks like if he dies. Chen Ming's psychic fluctuations continued to act on the spacecraft. The room where the black fog psychic was located was also changing rapidly, and a large amount of metal liquid rolled towards him like a mudslide. But at this moment, the portable mind wave generator in Chen Ming's hand suddenly overloaded, emitting charred smoke, and stopped working. This was much shorter than the time he had expected to use it just now. Chen Ming immediately realized that this was because the effect of the frenzy word spirit stone itself was too powerful, which was completely different from the situation when this generator used ordinary whisper spirit stones. This device couldn't bear it. After understanding the situation, Chen Ming couldn't help but frown, and immediately used psychic energy to repair the things in his hand. But in just a few seconds, the arm of the black fog psychic, covering his head, relaxed, and the thin riding black fog around him gradually calmed down and wrapped the psychic again. Before the black fog completely covered his figure, Chen Ming noticed that he looked at him with a hint of fear in his eyes, and pure hatred besides fear. The black fog psychic waved the long sword in his hand, which had substance and was completely different from the one held by the black fog arm just now, and dived into the shadow caused by the metal liquid. The next moment, he rushed out from the corner shadow of the different rooms that had just been opened in front of Chen Ming, and swung the sword to stab Chen Ming's neck. Chen Ming held the long sword tightly with one hand and swung it to meet the blade. The two swords collided. This time, the black mist psychic did not dissipate like his black mist arms, but wrestled with Chen Ming on the spot. The two sides stalemated for a while, but the power provided by Chen Ming's nano suit gave him an advantage in strength. The blade had begun to tilt towards the black mist psychic. However, the black mist psychic suddenly released the force and retreated, and his figure gradually disappeared. Chen Ming took advantage of the victory and swept his sword, leaving a blood mark before the black mist psychic completely disappeared. He did not completely turn into black mist that could not be hit at all. In the next moment, the dark figure appeared behind Chen Ming again. However, Chen Ming kept his psychic perception, and with the help of the extra physical fitness provided by the nano suit, he turned around and swung his sword to meet it without any delay. But this time, a dark arm suddenly stretched out from the shadow on the ground behind him again, raising the long sword in his hand. Fortunately, Chen Ming had anticipated this possibility and immediately turned sideways to slash at the Black Mist Psychic's long sword as soon as he noticed it. The Black Mist arms on the ground could not exist in the strong light like the Black Mist Psychic itself, and they could only exist for 3 seconds at most. But Chen Ming had just adjusted his position and avoided the Black Mist arms when the Black Mist Psychic approached again. At the same time, more Black Mist arms stretched out from any slightly dim position around him, and several black long swords all slashed at his fatal position. He relied purely on his reaction and physical fitness to forcibly twist away the first round of several Black Mist arms. But immediately, as the previous round of Black Mist arms dissipated, more Black Mist arms swung long swords and slashed at Chen Ming. Unless his movements could be 3 times faster, he would never be able to get out of so many swords now. This scene gave Chen Ming the feeling that everything just now was just a test, and it was not until now that the Black Mist Psychic really started the attack. Based on this one scene alone, Chen Ming believed that he would never be able to defeat this psychic in close combat. But he had other means to fight back. The psychic waves accumulated around Chen Ming's body suddenly burst out, and the violent psychic impact dispersed the Black Mist arms that were about to hurt him. And the portable mind wave generator held in his left hand was completely restored at this moment. A trace of fear flashed in the eyes of the Black Mist Psychic. He gave up suppressing Chen Ming and retreated into the shadows, trying to move away from Chen Ming by moving in the shadows. But the psychic fluctuations of the words of madness that Chen Ming once again triggered swept the entire spaceship, and the Black Mist Psychic once again screamed in pain. His entire psychic fluctuations were trembling, and he could not maintain the shadow state, so he was squeezed out of the shadows. And he was found by Chen Ming, who controlled the entire cruiser again. Another passage was opened directly from the inside of the warship. The Black Mist Psychic half knelt on the ground in pain, covering his head, and looked at Chen Ming with puzzled eyes. He didn't understand why Chen Ming could be completely unaffected by this terrifying psychic fluctuation. But before he figured it out, Chen Ming had already moved. And this time, Chen Ming would not give the Black Mist Psychic a chance to escape. He always maintained the maintenance of the portable psychic fluctuation generator to ensure that the generator could always maintain the surrounding environment full of violent psychic shocks. Only in this way can he be completely suppressed. A huge amount of metal liquid was sweeping in around. A trace of madness flashed in the eyes of the Black Mist Psychic. He kept muttering something in a low voice and stood up with a severe headache and frantic whispers in his ears. The black mist on his body surged, and like Chen Ming's psychic fluctuations and the psychic fluctuations of the word of madness spirit stone, it filled the surrounding environment. An unexpected thing happened immediately. A completely impenetrable black mist suddenly rolled out from the shadow of the generator in Chen Ming's hand, swallowing the generator in it, isolating all the psychic fluctuations, and the frantic whispers instantly disappeared on the spacecraft. Chen Ming immediately tried to use psychic fluctuations to break through the blockade of the black mist, but the small cage formed by the black mist was extremely hard and could not be broken without half a minute. The black mist psychic would not give Chen Ming half a minute. After the mental pulse ended, he directly picked up the long sword and rushed up. This time, his target was obviously changed to Chen Ming's left hand. Only by destroying this thing can he have the capital to fight Chen Ming. Otherwise, under the influence of that terrifying mental pulse, no one can make an effective response. Several black fog arms appeared next to Chen Ming again, and the black fog on the long sword held by the black fog psychic suddenly increased. The blade of the black fog long sword stretched out instantly, and when the psychic swung it, it swung out a series of black fog sword energy. Chen Ming immediately gave up the idea of raising the sword to block. The single-molecule sword in his hand was really an ordinary single-molecule sword. It was purely Chen Ming who had been repairing it with psychic energy, otherwise it would have broken long ago. But the weapon on the opposite side was a real psychic weapon, and it was definitely a special psychic weapon. He didn't dare to block this sword energy. Moreover, Chen Ming could clearly feel that the combat power of the black fog psychic was stronger than Chen Ming. This was a problem of combat experience. But Chen Ming still had no intention of giving up his idea. If he couldn't kill people here now, he would definitely encounter greater troubles later. Chen Ming rolled on the ground without any face, and the whole person fell directly under the floor of the hull. To be honest, this black mist psychic is very difficult to kill. You can't hit him, you can't catch him, and he will hide in the shadows if you are not careful. It is difficult to kill him. But Chen Ming can feel that the black mist psychic's mental power is being consumed quickly, and the consumption rate is much faster than his. Since the total mental power of the black mist psychic is not as good as his, then Chen Ming decided to win with the most brutal means. Chen Ming sank into the spaceship and was dragged by the metal liquid to instantly approach the black mist psychic, who was stunned for a moment and ready to dive into the shadow again. This time Chen Ming did not hold back and directly released all his mental power completely. A huge amount of mental power filled Chen Ming and the black mist psychic. This mental power began to involve the mental power of the black mist psychic, dragging it into the consciousness space that Chen Ming had not entered for a long time. This was the method that the flesh and blood psychic creature used against Chen Ming when it was pushed to the limit during the dimensional invasion. At the same time, this is what the boss said: the most essential, basic, and terrifying means for all psychics to fight each other. Once two psychics are dragged into the consciousness space, at least one of them will be severely shocked. Chen Ming's eyes have vaguely appeared the scene that has undergone tremendous changes compared to the past. The steel forest that has expanded hundreds of times, and the huge mountain composed of the abandoned appearance of all the spaceships controlled by Chen Ming. Chen Ming also saw the appearance of the consciousness space on the opposite side. It was a lightless island completely shrouded by thick black fog. But at this moment, the black fog psychic was afraid. He suddenly abandoned a large amount of mental power, forcibly squeezed Chen Ming's mental power, and disconnected the hedging link of mental power. He didn't dare to continue fighting with Chen Ming. The loss of a large amount of mental power also means the loss of combat power. The black fog psychic, who had consumed a lot of mental power in the battle with Chen Ming, had no way to continue fighting with Chen Ming. He pulled himself out, and the whole person's mental energy fluctuations disappeared on the spaceship. I don't know where he went, but Chen Ming already had an idea in his mind. Based on the observed psychic effects, mental power, and clothes of the black mist psychic, it is absolutely impossible for him to walk in space physically. Moreover, it has only been one day since Chen Ming set out from the 14th Legion branch, and he has not yet flown out of the scope of the Edge star field. According to the correspondence between the coordinates of hyperspace and normal universe, the galaxy where the Stardust level is now located is a galaxy where no one exists. Because this galaxy is full of barren planets, there are no minerals and no resources. The only valuable habitable planet has just experienced a natural disaster that affected the entire planet not long ago, and the fragile ecosystem is still recovering. No one will stay on the planet at this time, and no one will come to this place. The black mist psychic must have ambushed here in advance with a spaceship, waiting for Chen Ming to pass by, and then looking for an opportunity to board the ship. So either in this hyperspace or in the normal universe, there must be a spaceship, and there must be a possibility of continuing to track. Want to escape? If the black mist psychic still stays on the ship and faces him face to face, Chen Ming still needs to worry about the safety of Bai Quan and others. But if he ran away, the situation would be reversed instantly. Chen Ming immediately sent out several shuttles to bring back all the people who had just been thrown out. At the same time, he used the remaining half of his mental power to release psychic fluctuations that were enough to cover the entire Stardust-class ship, preventing the black mist psychic from invading again. Then, a huge device was built by Chen Ming outside the Stardust-class armor. What is this? Bai Quan, who already knew it was safe, followed Chen Ming and asked this question to the huge monster that appeared on the monitoring equipment outside the spacecraft in front of Chen Ming. Galaxy-level detection equipment at the highest point. With infinite jumps, how can he run away today? At this moment, in normal space, a place at most half a galaxy away from the Stardust after leaving the hyperspace. There is a small fleet here, dozens of spaceships, a quarter of them are destroyers, and the rest are all guards. In the captain's room of the fleet's flagship, the black mist psychic suddenly emerged from the shadows. He suddenly knelt on the ground exhausted, panting, and shouted to the stunned captain next to him with a dark face. "Let everyone get ready to go, but remember to go slowly and hide for a while." "Oh, okay." The captain immediately sent a communication to the entire fleet. At the same time, he also noticed the injuries on the Black Mist Psychic and immediately found a medical kit from the corner of the captain's room and handed it to the Black Mist Psychic. The Black Mist Psychic immediately tore open the tightly wrapped clothes on his body and quickly treated the place where Chen Ming had cut him before. However, he had just applied medicine to his arm. He found that it suddenly darkened outside the porthole of the captain's room. He looked up and saw a huge ship shadow leaping near the fleet, blocking the light from the star. Countless red light spots flickered on the side of the huge ship shadow. That was countless meteorite unmanned fighters. The bandage in the hand of the Black Mist Psychic fell to the ground, and his mind suddenly flashed with the words that the person who gave him the task said to him before he came out to perform the mission. "Don't give Chen Ming the opportunity to fight you with psychic power." When he was on the ship, he didn't feel much, and even thought that this sentence was a bit exaggerated. Chen Ming's psychic power looked like that. But now, looking at the Stardust class that suddenly appeared in front of his fleet without any signs, the Black Mist Psychic suddenly understood the meaning of this sentence. Emergency start the hyperspace system. Return to the normal universe. Escape. The captain's roar spread throughout the fleet's communication system. The entire fleet began to flee in panic. The black headscarf on the forehead of the Black Mist Psychic suddenly became a little wet with sweat. He stared at the red dots in the space that looked like a disaster, and hurriedly picked up the bandage and wrapped it around his arm a few times before putting on his clothes again. He must not die here today. The Black Mist Psychic quickly asked the captain to send out a distress signal at the critical moment. He was constantly thinking in his mind where the safest place would be under Chen Ming's pursuit. His psychic power allowed him to move quickly in any place with shadows, even if the shadows were separated by space. But now his mental power was only enough to support the last long-distance movement. If he failed to escape Chen Ming's pursuit after this movement, he would be really finished. He had to make a decision, deciding where to use the last chance of psychic power. Should he choose a ship farthest from Chen Ming's cruiser to gamble his life, betting that Chen Ming would not kill this ship? Or the Black Mist Psychic looked out of the porthole, bypassing Chen Ming's Stardust, and looked at the habitable planet whose ecosystem was gradually recovering. Half an hour later, all the dozens of small boats in the fleet became space junk under Chen Ming's attack. Even if they can repeatedly jump and pull through hyperspace and normal universe, they can't escape the pursuit of a cruiser with unlimited jump ability. At most, it can delay a little time. After Chen Ming dealt with them without any pressure, he also confirmed the situation of these spacecraft wreckages through scanning with high-intensity scanning equipment. But until the last escape boat was destroyed, he did not find any traces of psychics on any ship. Chen Ming did not find the body of the Black Mist Psychic on the only ship with residual psychic fluctuations, not even the remains of the body, although it exists. But Chen Ming believes that even if the Black Mist Psychic is close to exhausting his mental power, it is impossible for him to perish on the ship with the ship. He must be hiding somewhere. For example, the escape pods launched from these ships that were not intercepted by him, in the wreckage of a ship he has scanned, or even in the protective suit, he may have hidden somewhere in the universe through psychic power. He can't run too far. He must still be in this galaxy. There may be omissions in these places, but if the search continues, it may take several days, and it will be more difficult to find the Black Mist Psychic and accurately locate him. After all, the Black Mist Psychic is a psychic, and his mental power can be restored. If he is delayed for a while, he may be able to hide in the place that Chen Ming has already checked. The possibility of catching him has been reduced to the extreme. No, it seems that there is still a chance. Chen Ming suddenly found that he could still slightly sense the psychic fluctuations of the Black Mist Psychic. It seems that because of the mental power-proof confrontation that ended before it officially started, Chen Ming can now sense the location of the psychic fluctuations of the Black Mist Psychic. Although this feeling is very faint, it can't be sensed if the emotions fluctuate slightly, and it looks like it may dissipate at any time. But at least when Chen Ming calmed down, he could lock the whereabouts of the Black Mist Psychic. The Black Mist psychic did not seem to stay in the wreckage of those spacecraft or an escape pod. He chose to go to that habitable planet. Without the need for equipment scanning, Chen Ming directly controlled the Stardust class to land on the planet at the last location where the Black Mist psychic fluctuations were sensed. This is an area with almost no vegetation, only a yellowish desert. In this area, on a huge rock that was prominently protruding from the ground, Chen Ming found the long sword of the Black Mist psychic. The Black Mist psychic spiritual power remained on the sword, but the Black Mist psychic had disappeared, and the remaining spiritual power was gradually dissipating. And Chen Ming has now lost the positioning of the Black Mist psychic's spiritual power and can no longer find any traces of him. Chen Ming jumped onto the huge rock and swept his eyes around. But it is obvious that the Black Mist psychic will never leave traces that are so easily discovered. Chen Ming shook his head, turned around and pulled out the long sword stuck in the rock. The remaining spiritual power on the sword completely dissipated when Chen Ming held the hilt. Without the continuous supply of the Black Mist psychic's spiritual power, the dark long sword revealed its original appearance. A pale long sword made of bone psychic material. This means that Chen Ming cannot directly control it with psychic power like he did with the metal sword, and he also cannot know the name of this thing. He has to get on the spaceship first. However, Chen Ming can feel that the psychic properties of the bone material used to make the long sword tend to be negative, probably gloomy or depressed. And the psychic power of the psychic creature from which this bone comes is definitely related to shadows. This sword can be said to be perfectly adapted to the Black Mist psychic. He was really forced to leave the sword here. It's a pity that the compatibility of this sword is not very good for Chen Ming. But it can be used. After all, it is a psychic weapon, and the negative effect is not too bad, which is acceptable. When using psychic weapons with negative effects, in addition to bringing negative effects to themselves, they can also impose the same effect on the opponent. At least it is not a loss. It's just that Chen Ming didn't feel anything when he fought with the Black Mist psychic before, probably because the threshold was raised by the word of madness psychic stone. Chen Ming swung the sword in his hand and infused spiritual energy into the sword. All remaining traces of the Black Mist psychers were completely washed away. But after doing this, he suddenly felt a sense of discomfort. The source seems to be the gun on his waist and the bone sword in his hand. It seems that these two psychic weapons are in conflict. Their properties conflict. Chen Ming felt that the increase in spiritual energy given to him by his Ming was gradually disappearing due to the conflict in the nature of spiritual energy. He doesn't seem to be able to use two different psychic weapons at the same time. Chen Ming frowned and pulled out the spiritual energy he poured into the sword. The discomfort immediately disappeared, and the increase Ming gave him gradually recovered. He had never expected this situation. For this situation where he was in a blind spot of knowledge, it was best to ask professionals. Chen Ming hung the sword on his waist and suddenly said, "In the end, he ran away." Where can he run? Bai Quan, who was staying on the spaceship at this time, was communicating via video with Chen Ming through the terminal. When he heard Chen Ming's words, he immediately said, "Has the Black Mist psyker escaped? Then I remember you just said that there is another Hu-Yi coming? Where has he gone?" He was very strange. Apart from activating his psychic energy once at the beginning, he disappeared and couldn't be found at all. Bai Quan guessed, will there be a third psychic? He first took away Hu-Yi, and then took away the Black Mist. Chen Ming pointed to his waist, then there's no need to keep the sword. The sword may be a bait, specially attracting you here, and then the Black Mist psyker is hiding in other places. By the time you find the sword, they have already escaped through other ways. Chen Ming was silent for a moment and said, "It was the Black Mist that took Hui away last time. So who is it this time?" Actually, it doesn't necessarily require someone else to pick him up. Maybe Hui released a psychic energy and was sent away by the Black Mist psychic, and then the Black Mist psychic was consumed here with you. It is indeed possible. If we can't catch him now, when his spiritual energy recovers, there will be no chance of catching him. Is that the end of it? Maybe it's a pity. Just when Chen Ming said it was a pity. At Chen Ming's feet, about 50 meters deep underground, there was an underground cavity. The Black Mist Psyker, who had shrunk with his remaining abilities and restrained all psychic fluctuations, and whose mental power had been completely exhausted, could barely hear what Chen Ming said with his keen perception. He breathed a sigh of relief subconsciously. But just as he was relaxing, he suddenly heard the sound of dripping water next to him. The Black Mist Psychic immediately felt something was wrong. He obviously chose this underground cave that was full of rocks and very dry for his own life's safety to prevent the cave from collapsing. Why is there a sound of dripping water now? He carefully reached out and groped in the darkness, and soon followed the sound and touched the cold liquid. His fingertips felt a completely different heaviness than ordinary water drops. At this moment, the Black Mist Psychic's heartbeat nearly stopped. He had no time and could not do anything to deal with it, and the next moment he was violently dragged to the ground by the metallic liquid that seeped into the ground. In addition to the turbulent sound of breaking ground, Chen Ming's voice was full of surprise. It doesn't seem to have ended here. The Black Mist Psychic was hit to the ground by the metallic liquid. He was knocked to pieces for a moment, and his vision was pitch black. He wanted to escape, but he could only helplessly let Chen Ming trap him in the solidified metal liquid, just like the left-wing elements who were preparing to cause trouble on the dome. The exhaustion of his spiritual energy prevented him from moving even a little bit, and he could only show a look of despair like an ordinary person. Chen Ming didn't waste any more nonsense. He stood in front of the Black Mist Psyker and said, "Let me ask you a question. Who ordered you to come?" The Black Mist Psychic responded in silence, not wanting to reveal even a single word. When Chen Ming saw this, he did not use any violent means to interrogate him. He just took out the Mad Word's ectoplasm stone from the mind wave generator. At the same time, the metallic liquid that trapped the Black Mist Psyker, who was completely exhausted, also relaxed a little and released one of his hands. The Black Mist Psychic instantly understood what Chen Ming was going to do, and his eyes were full of fear for Chen Ming and the ectoplasmic stone in Chen Ming's hand. Now he could only choose to use up his remaining strength to clench his fists without daring to let go. But as soon as he clenched his fist, it was immediately pulled away by the metallic liquid. The power of the human body was completely powerless against the power of psychic energy. Seeing that the psyker in the black room still had no intention of speaking, Chen Ming no longer deliberately slowed down his movements and directly placed the Mad Word's spiritual stone in his hand. A large amount of bloodshot eyes suddenly appeared in the eyes of the Black Mist Psyker, whose mental power had been exhausted. His ears were shrouded in crazy murmurs, and the impact on his mind penetrated deep into his brain. He did not struggle at all. His body went limp and he passed out. Chen Ming checked and confirmed that his psychic fluctuations had completely subsided and that he had truly entered a coma. The psyker should not be rushed to death, but he will definitely not wake up in a short time. Chen Ming relaxed a little, unlocked the restrictions of the metallic liquid, took off the Black Mist Psyker's mask, and took a few photos of him to collect evidence. Then Chen Ming searched his body and found a few things that looked special. 3 glass beads. One is broken, but 2 are still intact. The broken glass bead is red and blue, while the 2 intact glass beads are extremely dark and the other is clear and transparent. All of them emit psychic energy fluctuations, but no specific purpose can be seen. Chen Ming thought for a while and stuffed them directly into the box used to house the portable psychic wave generator. This box is made of silent alloy, which can isolate psychic energy fluctuations. It can be used to place things whose specific uses are unclear. The only other things the Black Mist Psyker has on him are some medicines, bandages, hemostatic spray, and a few bottles of what seem to be medicine for psychics to restore and stabilize their mental powers. Chen Ming took away the medicine for the psyker, dismantled the rest casually, and threw them into the warehouse of the spacecraft. To be honest, the Black Mist Psyker was a bit poor. I don't know if he was that poor to begin with, or if he didn't bring much because of the assassination mission. Chen Ming felt a little regretful, but the content of the regret was a little different this time. But at least there is still a sword left by the Black Mist Psychic, and the value of this thing is still quite good. After confirming that there was nothing on the Black Room Psyker, Chen Ming directly built a cryo-sleep chamber with its own energy crystal power supply and stuffed him into it. Bai Quan was a little surprised when he watched this scene through the video call. He didn't expect that there was such a way to restrict psychers. Chen Ming noticed the change in Bai Quan's expression and guessed what Bai Quan was thinking and said, "You look quite surprised. How do you usually deal with psionic criminals? Normally, two psychers must be chasing them. If they are captured alive, they will be escorted by a special spaceship made of silent alloy. The psychers who are hunting must remain highly focused throughout the process, so I feel that you are using cryosleep. The method of freezing people in warehouses can be promoted." Chen Ming immediately pointed out the shortcomings of this method. Then the psycher must first be exhausted before he can use this method, and it doesn't mean much to a psycher like me. Bai Quan was a little unconcerned. Meeting a psychic like you is purely a small probability event. Anyway, I will definitely have to tell someone later, no matter how many methods are used. By the way, what are you going to do with this black mist psycher? Chen Ming moved his eyes away from Bai Quan on the terminal, looked at the cryo-sleep chamber next to him and said, "I must have killed him originally. After all, he is a psyker with strong mobility and strong assassination ability. And he is still thinking about me, so it would be best to kill him to avoid future troubles. But since it's captured alive, it's still useful. This isn't a simulation. You can't do anything if you capture a psyker. It feels like you're going to do something bad. It's indeed a bad thing. I want to take him to the Ling nerve extraction device to extract his Ling nerve." Chen Ming admitted Bai Quan's guess and said this in a cold tone. He actually didn't want to use the Qiling nerve extraction device before, even if he clearly had the opportunity to use it on Yin Xiong. But in the end, his own personal experience made him feel that this method was a bit cruel for psychers, so he did not implement it. But since the incident some time ago, Chen Ming has no sympathy for the leftist elements in his heart. No matter how cruel things are done to them, even if they are executed with his own hands, he will never be soft-hearted. Bai Quan also knew about the Qiling nerve extraction device. Because of this, he said with some confusion, "But that thing is not in the machinery clan." But mid-sentence, he suddenly realized, "Oh, you have touched this device before?" "Yes, when I was still with Yu Hui, my use of my psychic powers was not perfect enough, so the equipment was always placed there. But some time ago, my spiritual power was enough to take away the Qiling nerve extraction device. I just had Yu Hui's help in maintaining it, but I couldn't use it for the time being, so I didn't do it." Bai Quan said smoothly, "Let Yu Hui be a wage earner, right? Sooner or later, all the afterglows will be my wage earners." Bai Quan shook his head. "That's really okay. Are you planning to do it now?" Chen Ming immediately denied it and said, "It can't be done. There is still a spiritual enlightenment nerve missing. To extract the spiritual enlightenment nerve of a psyker, an artificial spiritual enlightenment nerve that has been specially cultivated must be used. I know the training method from Yu Hui Club, and I also know the process. Judging from the state of this black mist psyker, the final extraction effect may not be very good. But if it's effective, he'll be more likely to escape, so I'd rather have a smaller chance of success." Bai Quan silently wrote down what Chen Ming said, and then asked, "What about after the Qiling nerve is extracted?" "There is a high probability that I will die. I'm not sure. After all, Yu Hui's extraction of me was not completed at the beginning. I mean, after you extract the spiritual nerve, what will it be used for?" Chen Ming was stunned, not because he had not thought about the use of the extracted spiritual nerve, but because he suddenly thought of something that he had not realized yet. Something that could be catastrophic for a psyker. If the technology of Qiling nerve extraction device spreads in the empire, then there will definitely be many people who will fight for a spiritual enlightenment nerve. There will definitely be psychers who will act recklessly in order to steal other people's spiritual nerves. But most of them are definitely ordinary psychers who are struggling in the empire to protect their spiritual nerves. Powerful psychers have the ability to protect themselves, but weak psychers have no room for struggle. Chen Ming had experienced before what a psycher would be like when his psychic powers were weak. Even if he was able to protect himself now, he didn't want to see such a scene. So Chen Ming thought for a long time, slightly changed his original idea, and said, "Let's study it and find out whether a psycher has the ability to have a second spiritual nerve. If that doesn't work, try implanting it into ordinary people and see if they can have the same spiritual power as this spiritual nerve. What if it doesn't work? If that doesn't work, then throw the spirit Qing nerves into the cryo-sleep chamber and freeze them. Since that civilization has created a spirit Qing nerve extraction device, it will definitely use these extracted soul Qing nerves. After we find these things, we can look back at the use of the extracted spiritual nerve. Chen Ming's words did not mention any idea of revealing the technology related to the extraction of spiritual nerves, and he did not even want to communicate with anyone about spiritual nerve technology. Bai Quan didn't notice any problems at this time, so he said normally, "This is a good idea." But having said that, the Empire only knows the name and approximate effects of the Qeeling nerve extraction device. The specific equipment has not yet been obtained. I had this information you provided some time ago. If the mission was carried out normally, this equipment should also be on the mission plan, but unfortunately, I don't think it's a pity. Chen Ming did not hide his thoughts in front of Bai Quan and said, "I even think it is best for the Empire to never get this device." That's true for you psychers. Bai Quan had already thought about this when he learned about the concept of the Qeeling neural extraction device. He instantly understood what Chen Ming meant and said immediately, "But you don't have to be too pessimistic. Judging from current research, the psionic energy awakened by psychers is definitely the most suitable for the psychers themselves. If others want to replace it, the cost, difficulty, and effect will all be unsatisfactory. A natural psycher and a psychic nerve are definitely worth more as a psycher." Well, I hope so. Chen Ming knew that what Bai Quan said was indeed okay, but people's greed is absolutely endless. Bai Quan also knows that many times many situations cannot be viewed according to ideals, and there will always be people willing to take risks to do things with greater risks. Moreover, Chen Ming now looked like he didn't want to say more in this regard, so he didn't continue to say anything. Seeing Chen Ming build 2 robots beside him and take the cryo-sleep chamber and head back to the Stardust level, Bai Quan suddenly changed the subject and said, "How do you know he is hiding underground directly below?" "I actually don't know. It's just that now that we're all there, I can't investigate all the big planets. I can only investigate a few places nearby. I actually found them, which I didn't expect." I guess his idea is similar to what you just guessed, which is to leave his sword on the planet first to distract me. It makes me think that he left the sword here just to distract me, and then he hid somewhere else. But he actually burrowed down and hid underground, waiting for others to rescue him, and then I just happened to catch him. Bai Quan asked, "Then why doesn't he really run away again? As long as he can hide somewhere else, it should be difficult for you to continue chasing him, right? One is that he has no mental strength and can no longer run away from a long distance. You see, he didn't resist when I caught him. The previous fight with me cost me a lot of energy. When I finally had to fight him, he didn't dare to give up. He was wasted a lot more. As a result, his mental strength was gone. The other is that he may really think that the underground of this sword is safer than other places. He wanted to take a gamble, and I want to check other places. I didn't check here. He lost the bet, and this is the result," Chen Ming said, putting his hand on the cryo-sleep chamber that was being moved slowly by the robot next to him, and looked at the ordinary face in the cryo-sleep chamber. Without the madness and hatred before, the black mist psyker looks like an ordinary person. But Chen Ming suddenly shook his head. The current appearance seemed to be false. But the look of hatred in his eyes before was definitely not fake. He sighed. "It's the left path again." Bai Quan suddenly said, "No, it was Lu Wei and the others who did it." Chen Ming was stunned for a moment and nodded slowly. Shortly after Chen Ming boarded the ship, the Stardust class started up again and set sail to leave the galaxy. Chen Ming needs to deal with the things that were just searched. Bai Quan also needed to comfort the few people accompanying him who were thrown out of the spacecraft by Chen Ming before, and at the same time record the accident and put the blame on Lu Wei. Although it is unlikely that Lu Wei will really do such a thing at this time, who can guarantee that the person on the other side will not have his own ideas? The blame must be placed on them, which will give them more say and more benefits in what they do next. What's more, only he, Chen Ming, and the people on Lu Wei's side knew the specific route of action after they set off. None of the people accompanying him, not even his secretary, knew about it. The people who can leak the spacecraft's route must be people from Lu Wei's side. It's no problem to cause trouble for them. and just half an hour after Chen Ming sailed away from that galaxy. On a habitable planet in the galaxy, a figure suddenly emerged from the shadow of the rock near where the black mist psyker was previously captured. He is also filled with black mist, as if he is also a black mist psyker. However, the black mist on his body dissipated quickly, and he was not surrounded by black mist for a long time like the black mist psychic, revealing a striking and handsome face. In the palm of his left hand, which is missing a little finger, there are several glass beads of different colors that he is circling. The first time the new psyker stepped out of the shadows, he noticed the huge traces left by the Stardust class when it landed. He glanced at the landing mark for a few times, and then walked to the place where Chen Ming caught the black mist psyker. Here he saw the deep pit that seemed to be dug from the ground to the surface, and the footprints of the two robots next to the pit leading to the landing mark of the spacecraft. The psyker's expression remained unchanged as he put away the glass beads he was twisting in his hands. He took out a terminal to take photos and videos of these traces, and after sending the captured content, he made a phone call. But he immediately hung up the phone again. His eyes suddenly locked on the bottom of a nearby rock. He quickly stepped forward and found a miniature surveillance probe from the lower corner of the rock that had obviously just been manufactured. The psyker immediately crushed the monitor, which was no bigger than the tip of his little finger, raised his head and looked around. He couldn't be sure now whether there was a second or more surveillance left by Chen Ming nearby. He could only frown and put his hand into his pocket. A black mist suddenly burst out from his body, shrouding the entire environment in darkness. And this black mist also had the ability to cut off sounds, completely cutting off the possibility of Chen Ming's surveillance. Chen Ming, who was already on the spaceship at this time, could only say it was a pity. Although his psychic energy does not necessarily require a monitoring structure to be monitored, in fact, as long as there is a little bit of his psychic control left, even if there is only one iron atom left, he can observe it to a certain extent through this iron atom surrounding situation. But at this moment, in the dark fog, he really couldn't see anything. But fortunately, he still got some information through his casual arrangement. That psyker and the glass beads he carries are absolutely inseparable from the fact that he can use the black mist psionic power of the black mist psyker. Within the black mist, the psychic dialed the phone again. The moment the call was connected, he said, "Chen Ming left some tricks here. My current appearance has been seen." A vague, processed voice came from the other end of the phone. "It doesn't matter. Where's the black mist? It has been found. The last traces of his spiritual energy fluctuations remain here. But I guess he is either dead or captured alive. No matter which one it is, we will probably never see him again." There was silence on the other end of the phone when I heard the news. The psyker touched his pocket and pulled out a dark, broken glass bead. He casually threw the broken glass beads on the ground and took out a few glass beads from another pocket of his clothes that were the same as the clear and transparent glass beads that Chen Ming had found on the black mist psyker before. The spiritual energy fluctuations belonging to him gradually gathered on these transparent beads, and these beads suddenly began to absorb the remaining spiritual energy fluctuations belonging to the black mist psychics here under the stimulation of spiritual energy. 3 of the glass beads in the handful gradually turned pitch black during the absorption process, just like the pitch black beads Chen Ming had obtained from the black mist psyker before. The psyker picked out 3 dark glass beads and put them into another pocket. After putting away all the remaining glass beads, he said to himself, "It's a pity that his psionic power can only be used 3 times. It's going to be out of print in the future, but it's obviously very useful." After hearing this sentence, the other end of the phone immediately said, "Where is Chen Ming's remaining spiritual energy fluctuation?" The psyker's eyes subconsciously glanced around him, and then at the surveillance wreckage not far away that was completely shrouded in black mist. No. Didn't he leave something at your place? Just because he left something behind doesn't mean he left psychic energy fluctuations. I have noticed before that there are no psychic fluctuations when his psychic energy acts on anything, and his psychic energy will only produce psychic fluctuations when it is stimulated. Chen Ming has been deliberately hiding his psychic fluctuations, leaving no traces. Unless I fight him head-on, I can't extract it at all. So cautious. Can you get other information? Yes, he still has a lot of things that can't be hidden. The psychic responded and said, Chen Ming has a very strong spiritual stone in his hand. The strength is not close to the level of spirit, but from the remaining traces, the nature is very extreme. Chen Ming's psychic power is there. He must have mastered some ways to manufacture mental pulse devices, and he will definitely use this as a means of attack. If you want to get close to Chen Ming, you must have the adaptability of mental pulses. Black Mist should have suffered a loss in this regard. But Chen Ming's close combat ability should not be strong. The other end of the phone asked, How can you tell? The psychic half-crouched on the ground, rubbed his fingertips on the sand, revealing a few drops of blood that had already melted into the sand and solidified. He filmed this and sent it over, saying, Hei Wu is injured and bleeding, but not seriously. He is a professional close combat assassin who was forced here and was killed or captured alive, but he only had minor injuries. If Chen Ming's close combat ability is strong, it would be too unreasonable. With the assistance of that extreme spiritual stone, Hei Wu should have been killed directly on the spacecraft, so I think Chen Ming's close combat ability is definitely not strong. If you come again next time, find a psychic with strong physical ability. The psychic patted the dust off his hands, stood up and continued. Then, Chen Ming's mental power is inestimable, and his strength far exceeds that of psychics in the same period of time. This can prove my guess about Chen Ming's close combat ability. Because the psychic fluctuations and mental power left by Black Mist here are unstable, it is definitely a sign that he has exploded a huge amount of mental power in an instant. Black Mist doesn't have the means to explode so much mental power. There is only one possibility for this situation to occur, that is, mental power hedging. And it must have been initiated by Chen Ming. The psychic suddenly said with certainty. Black Mist had absolutely no problem getting close to Chen Ming at the beginning. I don't know if his people were difficult to defend against, but his first assassination attempt failed. He was dragged into a frontal battle by Chen Ming, but Chen Ming's main combat power must be on the spaceship. It is impossible for him to gain an advantage in psychic power over Black Mist, who specializes in close combat. He can't gain an advantage in psychic power, and he can't win in melee combat. The Spirit Stone can't completely establish the victory, so he seems to have no choice but to use this method. Chen Ming's close combat ability must be relatively poor. He probably saw that Black Mist's total mental power was not high, so he did this. Black Mist either gave up or lost. He should have given up, otherwise his psychic power fluctuations would have been S condition will be worse. No, he should have died directly on the spaceship. After he was scared and barely survived, he hid underground on the planet, but Chen Ming chased him and caught Black Mist with almost no resistance. This should be what happened on Black Mist's side. If you want to attack Chen Ming again, it's best to have 3 psychics cooperate. One is responsible for approaching, one is responsible for getting rid of Chen Ming's Spirit Stone, and the last one is in hand-to-hand combat. The other end of the phone fell silent again, and after a long time, he said, What a harsh condition. The psychic shrugged and said, This is what I can analyze, and Black Mist can actually do it alone, but his spirit is not good enough. The divine power cannot support the task that 3 people should do. Do you think it is really worth losing such a psychic to do such a thing? The person on the other end of the phone said, If Black Mist comes back alive, it will be worth it even if the assassination fails. Since we have obtained Chen Ming's whereabouts and know where Chen Ming is going, we must try it. You can try to assassinate Chen Ming. You can also provoke a troublesome enemy for Hu Yi, and you can also disgust another faction of the 14th Legion. Why not do it? The psychic obviously disagreed with the view of the person on the other end of the phone and said to the phone, But unfortunately, Black Mist is dead. Who would have thought that he, who is most suitable for assassination and has the strongest escape ability, would fall into the hands of Chen Ming? His ability to escape must be questionable, so what's next? What should we do? The phone was quiet for a while, and then said, Come back. Don't continue to think about taking action against Chen Ming. We don't have many psychics, so we must consider a more complete plan. Anyway, we have already touched Chen Ming. Even if we don't do it next, the 14th Legion will definitely quarrel on its own. It would be best if a civil war could be triggered. It would be good for us no matter who is weakened. The psychic glanced at the terminal, hung up the phone, and said to himself, I don't expect this to happen. As he spoke, his figure fell into the shadow and disappeared on the planet. The surrounding black fog gradually dissipated, but no trace was left. At this time, on the Stardust level, Chen Ming watched the black fog dissipate with some regret. Unfortunately, the camera was not hidden enough, and only a little information was obtained. But there's no use regretting now. It can't change what happened. Chen Ming kept all the information obtained through monitoring. Then he inspected the trophies he had just acquired that he had never seen before. He ruled out drugs and the like, mainly the bone sword over there and the 3 glass beads with psychic fluctuations. The full name of the bone longsword is Night Owl Tail Blade Bone Longsword, Lo. Chen Ming went to check the creature Night Owl specifically. This is a medium-sized carnivore that looks like a cross between a leopard and a tiger, with a bone blade on its tail. Live on a planet illuminated by only one faint star but rich in underground life. The geological conditions of this planet are very special, and the ecosystem is also very unique. There are huge underground cavities that exist almost everywhere on the entire planet, and the surface of the crust is supported by countless giant pillars hundreds or even thousands of meters in diameter. In this dark underground world where only fluorescent plants provide little illumination, but where life is extremely abundant, nocturnal owls are the top predators. As for the psychic creatures in such a dark world, their psychic abilities naturally develop in this direction. So it's just right for black mist psychers. This man is so lucky. Unfortunately, his good days have come to an end. Chen Ming put away his sword and then looked at the 3 glass beads. The names of the 2 intact glass beads are Heart-Gathering Bead, Black Mist, and Heart-Gathering Bead, None. Just as Chen Ming thought, they are the creations of the psyker. The broken red and blue glass bead is called Broken Heart-Gathering Bead, Entropy. Although the specific effect could not be seen, Chen Ming already had some uncertain guesses just by looking at these names. However, this kind of thing cannot be done by just guessing. It is better to ask a professional. Chen Ming picked up the terminal and called the boss directly. During the call, Chen Ming also confirmed his last trophy, which was the Black Mist Psyker itself. The way to deal with this trophy is very simple. Just find a way to get a spiritual nerve and try to extract it. The spiritual power of Black Mist is quite interesting. Even when he finally got the spiritual enlightenment nerve, Chen Ming still had to consider whether to use it on himself or on Black Mist Psychers. The call was answered quickly. Chen Ming greeted, "Long time no see, boss." Because it was a video call, Chen Ming noticed that the boss didn't seem to be at the hardware store, but somewhere else, and he was also wearing formal clothes. However, the boss didn't seem very busy. He still had time to say hello to Chen Ming. "It's Xiao Ming, are you okay?" "Well, I just had a fight with the Psyker and got something from him." "Wait, aren't you in the 14th Legion?" "I happened to be ambushed when I was out on business. It should be the Psyker from Zhujiang and Hu Yi." The boss glanced sideways, but immediately turned back and said, "The Psyker on the left path? What's the result?" "The result is that Hui ran away without even seeing his face, but the other Psyker who uses Black Mist is now in my hands. I got something from him, but I can't understand the specific effect." The boss understood what Chen Ming meant and said, "You want to ask me, right? Take it out and have a look." Chen Ming placed 3 glass beads on the table and said, "They all have psychic fluctuations." The boss stared at the glass bead for a while. His expression gradually became serious, and he said, "This is something I have never seen before. It should be related to the ability of psychers. Have you ever seen that psyker you captured use this thing?" "I've never seen anyone actually use it, but the color of this glass bead may correspond to other people's psychic abilities." "Corresponds to other people's psychic powers?" "For example, this black one, I feel it probably corresponds to the psychic energy of the Black Mist Psyker I captured. I also have 2 videos here that should be able to prove it." "Send it to me." "Okay." Chen Ming immediately sent over a video of a Black Mist Psyker using his psychic powers, a video of a Black Mist Psyker being captured by him, and a video of the next Psyker using Black Mist psychic powers. The boss finished reading it quickly and said to Chen Ming, I feel that you should have something in your heart. However, he suddenly stopped before he finished speaking and turned to Chen Ming and said, Wait a moment, I have something to do here, so don't worry about it yet. The boss raised his head, turned on mute, and turned the terminal upside down on the table. He said to Hui, who was sitting next to him and kept gesturing to him, What are you doing? Hui confirmed that Wuan had turned off the sound, pointed at the terminal and said, I know this thing. I met him last time when I was discussing cooperation with someone. The last time you came to block me? Right. Hui recalled what he had done before and said, There is a psyker from Zwajia. He plays with glass beads like this in his hand. I have seen black and transparent ones in his hands, but the red and blue one is I really haven't seen it. Does that person look the same as the person in the video? It's different. It looks completely different. I really like the ecology and movements. It's either plastic surgery or… Wuan added the words for Hui. His spiritual power allows him to change his appearance. Although I still don't understand the psychic principle of this psyker, at least the general situation has been understood. That psyker stole your psychic abilities and appearance. This was the reason why you appeared at the 14th Legion before. This is a psyker I have never heard of before. He actually has this kind of ability, and he is still a psyker on the left path. This is really… Wuan shook his head, not sure if it was a pity or some special emotion. After he finished speaking, he looked at Hui and said, You should continue to pretend to hide and continue to investigate Zwajing secretly. Zwajing used you to assassinate Xiaoming and frame you. He must have some ideas about you. They will come to you sooner or later. If you expose your connection with Xiaoming too early, if the news leaks out, you may not be able to kill the person pretending to be you in your lifetime. Tisk. Hui smacked his lips in displeasure. However, Wuan was not used to it and mocked directly. Like to do things without doing background checks? You just have to bear with it. Hui waved his hands to Wuan and said, I have already apologized to you, and you accepted the apology. I will compensate you for everything I earned. I also went to the president to beg for mercy. Stop talking. It's useless for me and the president. You haven't done it yet for Xiaoming. Hui had a headache when he heard this sentence and said, It's hard for me to meet him now, but don't you think I'm providing you with information now? I will definitely apologize to Chen Ming when I have the chance. I don't want to be missed by him. When this matter is over, I will really find a place to sleep. I will sleep until you and Chen Ming die of old age before I come out. Wuan tilted his head and looked at him and said, I may have to go into hibernation in 2 years, are you sure? Tisk, let's talk about it later. Hui shut his mouth. Wuan stopped talking nonsense to Hui and turned to talk about the business. There are clues, but we may not be able to follow this to pursue it. They lost someone on Xiaoming's side. They may not look for him in a short time. Instead, they will look for you. I think it's time for you to show your presence a little bit. Okay, that's it. I won't tell you anymore. Xiaoming is still waiting. Just as Wuan was about to pick up the terminal, Hui stretched out his hand to stop him and said, Wait, I suddenly remembered one more thing. That's how to use this glass bead. If I remember correctly, it should be infused with spiritual energy and then crushed directly. The rest depends on feeling. Wuan looked at Hui suspiciously and asked, How do you know? Well, I had a chat with the guy from Zwajing before and asked what this thing was for. He gave me one and let me try it. So maybe that's when my psychic energy waves were stolen. Wuan looked at Hui like he was looking at a fool. Now I seriously doubt your IQ and the correctness of working with you. I can't help it. I see that the money can't move. Hui also said like a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. But at least you figured out how to use it, right? My psychic energy was stolen when I used it in front of the psyker, but Chen Ming is unlikely to be able to do it. Just ask him to use it carefully. Also, you have to be careful when using it. If you don't master the properties of psychic energy, the effect will not be ideal. I used to need black beads. As a result, I only had time to learn a little bit, and the effect of the beads expired. Wuan nodded, picked up the terminal again, and said to Chen Ming, Sorry, Xiaoming, someone here just gave me a message and told me about the effect of the glass beads on your hand. The boss gave Chen Ming a rough explanation based on what Hui said. As Chen Ming listened, his eyes gradually shifted from the dark bead to the broken red and blue bead. Stealing psychic energy? The boss's words have basically verified the conjecture he had based on the name he obtained through psychic energy. Does this mean that the person who came to the volcano last time was not actually Hu Yi, but the psyker who stole Hu Yi's spiritual energy? Moreover, only Hu Yi's face was photographed. A face often cannot be used as evidence. It was just because of Hu Yi's spiritual power that Hu Yi came to assassinate him. Now it seems that this matter has a big problem. However, Chen Ming was still not 100% sure that Hu Yi was not cooperating with Zhu Jing. What if it was Hu Yi who provided the psychic energy to that psychic? And no matter what, there was a complete conflict between him and Hu Yi, and Chen Ming would never forget this matter. After listening to the boss's story while thinking, Chen Ming thanked him. Then he put the 3 glass beads into the silent alloy box. He took out another bone sword and placed it in front of the terminal. "Boss, I have something else." When Chen Ming put the bone sword on the table, the boss recognized the essence of this thing at a glance and said, "A spiritual weapon made of psychic biological materials, confiscated? Well, I found that if I carry 2 psychic weapons at the same time, I will have an uncomfortable feeling. The source is my weapon. I don't know what the situation is, so I came to ask you." The boss reassured Chen Ming and said, "This is a conflict in the nature of psychic weapons. It's a normal thing. Don't worry. Generally speaking, only weapons made of materials with the same or very similar properties can be used together. Because when you use a psionic weapon, while your own psionic energy is amplified, it will also be tainted with some of the properties of the psionic weapon material. So when using a second weapon, the different properties of the 2 psychic weapons will cause your psychic energy to be disordered. So that's it. Generally, just prepare 1 psychic weapon. Use whatever weapon you have in hand that works best for you. You should have to change it in the future. This sword doesn't seem to be suitable for you. The one Bai Quan gave you is no longer suitable for you now. The material properties are not good enough. You must choose better materials. Speaking of this, you haven't gotten any psychic equipment yet, have you?" Chen Ming asked. "What type of psychic equipment?" The boss pointed to his own body and said, "Just the clothes, armor, and so on." "Indeed, no, but using psychic materials to make such a thing? Isn't it too luxurious?" "I don't think it's a luxury for you. It's just that you didn't expect to be able to do this." The boss's words were basically a clear statement, and Chen Ming immediately thought of Yin Xiong again. It really is. Chen Ming remembered that all the psychic metal materials made by Yin Xiong would be contaminated with his psychic properties, a property that was a bit close to arrogance. He and Chen Ming didn't get along well, and Chen Ming was a little busy recently, so he always left Yin Xiong to Chao Fan to deal with and didn't pay much attention to it. But now I think about it, even if Yin Xiong's psychic properties are not compatible with him, there seems to be no problem if he just uses it once. Now he is only Yin Xiong who can produce psychic materials of the same nature, so he really can't ask for too much. Besides, although Yin Xiong only produces psychic metal, and metal is not convenient for making clothes for daily wear, there is still no problem in making some body armor. Even going a little further, Chen Ming can use these materials to make power armor. The volume of power armor can be much larger than that of psionic weapons. With the same strength of psionic weapons, the size will obviously determine the final increase obtained by the psyker. Although the manufacturing cost of psionic power armor is definitely higher than that of psionic weapons, the effects will definitely be more exaggerated. There is indeed nothing wrong with this idea. Chen Ming felt that he could give the prosthesis a piece of psionic power armor the next time it was needed. Biological armor actually contains some metal materials, so you can try it if you have the chance. Speaking of which, Chen Ming thought of one more thing. Since he can produce a complete set of psychic power armor made entirely of psychic materials with the same properties, even all metal materials of different types can have the same properties. So even if this kind of thing is not very compatible with other psychics, the effect alone should interest many people, right? Chen Ming happened to remember that Bai Quan had said before that there were indeed people who specifically collected things that psychers could use and put them on the psycher contribution platform for others to redeem. So if you take out this kind of psychic power armor, you should be able to get a lot of contribution points, right? either selling raw materials directly or selling finished products made from raw materials. Just think about it, and you will know which one is more profitable. Even if there is a complicated process behind this, and there is no way to directly exchange power armor for contribution points, Chen Ming can still try to trade directly with other psychers. Use their contribution points to help redeem what he needs. Anyway, he is considered an insider now, so there should be no problem in exchanging these things internally. It's just that it's more troublesome for other people to wear power armor, unlike him who can just make it directly on their bodies. If someone really feels that power armor is inconvenient, he can also provide ordinary psychic weapons with the same properties as power armor to match the power armor, so that they will not have no combat effectiveness at all if they cannot wear power armor. If that didn't work, Chen Ming could even modify the design to make the power armor wearable as quickly as possible. Maybe by selling this, he could get the seeds of the spiritual enlightenment nerve and the fairy spirit tree in advance. Otherwise, he will have to wait at least until the contribution points of the purgatory core in half a month, and the contribution points of the synchrotron core in 1.5 months before he can replace the spiritual enlightenment nerve that he needs now. This should be a good idea, but there is no rush now. Now Chen Ming just thought about it briefly and did not continue to think deeply. After all, the boss is still chatting with him. Chen Ming pulled back his divergent thoughts and asked what his boss had just said. So what happened to the armor made of psychic materials? Nothing. Just remember to use materials of the same nature when making different parts of the armor. Remember, it must not be made from materials of different properties, not even remotely. This is different from the requirement of using 2 different weapons at the same time. Weapons can be used with a little deviation, but armor is definitely not. Don't combine several materials with different psychic properties together, especially don't let them come into contact with the human body, otherwise it will be very troublesome. Hearing this, Chen Ming couldn't suppress his curiosity and asked, "So what will happen if you do this?" It's hard to tell you for now. This involves more in-depth aspects related to psychic power. You will understand it when your psychic power develops to a certain level in the future. Okay. Although he didn't ask what the consequences would be, Chen Ming did remember the boss's warning. After all, if he could make the boss so serious, then the consequences would definitely not be what he wanted to see. After digesting what the boss said for a while, Chen Ming suddenly asked again, "If you want to use weapons and armor together, do they also need to have the same properties?" "Yes, but I think you should be able to meet this condition." "Indeed, then I have basically no problem with these." Chen Ming ended the topic he had just brought up and turned to another matter. "Boss, do you have any news about Hui?" "Hui? You want to make trouble for him, right?" "If I have any news, I will inform you later." "Thank you, boss. There is nothing else for the time being." "Okay, you go and get busy. If you don't understand anything, ask me." Chen Ming thanked again and ended the communication. Wu-en also put down the terminal. However, Hui next to him didn't understand what Wu-en had just said and asked, "Chen Ming is so rich? Can he also equip a full set of psychic armor?" Wu-en looked at Hui strangely, shook his head and said nothing. Question mark. While Hui was puzzled, Chen Ming also put down the terminal, thinking about how to use his 2 psychic weapons. In fact, he can have one weapon for the body and one for the prosthesis, but the body can also benefit from the psychic weapons around the prosthesis, so he is not sure whether this is reliable. It is not clear whether there will be conflicts between the prosthesis and the body holding psychic weapons separately. If there is, only one of the 2 weapons can be chosen, but if not, then this matter is interesting. However, this idea is a bit metaphysical, and Chen Ming does not intend to consider it now. Now let's consider the distribution of the 2 psychic weapons. He actually prefers to let the prosthesis carry this bone sword. After all, the prosthesis needs to face more dangers. A long sword with special properties made of pure psychic materials, and a psychic revolver used purely as a buff machine. Which one to choose for the dangerous one is actually needless to say. But if Chen Ming changes the weapon for the prosthesis, Bai Quan, who gave him the revolver, will definitely see it. This is a bit embarrassing for Bai Quan. So how can he make a replica for the prosthesis later? Just as Chen Ming was thinking about these questions, there was a knock on the door of his room. Bai Quan pushed the door open and walked in and said, "Okay, I have spread the news that we were attacked, and I have arranged people to do something." That black mist psychic. I am talking about you killing him. So as to avoid more troubles, just ask him directly when the time comes. By the way, you haven't repaired your spaceship yet, right? Chen Ming shook his head. Because the black mist psychic came directly to him, and his room was at the edge of the spaceship. Using crew quarters as ship armor has always been a fine tradition of the Navy, and the Space Navy is also the Navy. So in the battle just now, the edges of the spaceship were basically destroyed, which did not affect the use of the spaceship itself, so Chen Ming was not in a hurry to repair it. And it happened that a new psychic came to the habitable planet behind and was filmed by the surveillance. Chen Ming's attention was immediately focused on that side, and the spaceship was naturally still the same. Bai Quan nodded slightly and said, "That's good. Let's keep it like this. We have to go to the nearest star system with spacecraft equipment to do a damage assessment. Hurry up, it's best to get it within a day. Otherwise, it seems that the psychic fluctuations will dissipate, and some evidence will be more difficult to preserve." Is there such a place? If a psychic commits a crime and can't find a department to deal with it, it won't work. Generally speaking, there is at least one in a star region. I understand, but there is actually one in a star region? Yes, although the probability of psychics awakening is not high, there will definitely be a lot of them under the current population base of the Empire. One in a star region is almost enough. You don't see many psychics on a daily basis. One reason is that the Empire has a large territory, and the other is that which psychic likes to run to the edge star region? Isn't the prosperous star region good? You are an exception. After all, you awakened in the edge star region, and your psychic power also requires you to stay in such a place. What about the boss? Wu Wen is also an exception. His situation is more complicated. Bai Quan looked like he didn't want to say more, so Chen Ming didn't ask more. He had actually asked the boss why he came to such a place before, but the boss seemed unwilling to say more. There must be some story behind this, and Bai Quan was also involved. Since both parties did not want to talk, Chen Ming would definitely not take the initiative to touch this bad luck. Where are the coordinates of the place you mentioned? Bai Quan opened the terminal and pointed to a location on the star map to Chen Ming and said, "Here." Chen Ming looked at the star map and asked, "Military district?" "Of course it's the military district. It doesn't matter. I've already informed them in advance. Just go there directly." "Okay." Chen Ming didn't waste any words. After confirming the coordinates, he directly started the Stardust-class jump engine. 1 minute later, the Stardust class appeared in the galaxy of the destination. But it was useless to just arrive. Chen Ming continued to stay here for a few hours to make a damage assessment. It was not until Bai Quan got a damage assessment report that he was finally able to repair the Stardust class and set off for the destination again. He originally wanted to jump directly there, but Bai Quan stopped him. Bai Quan must have a reason for doing this, so Chen Ming didn't say anything and continued to let the Stardust fly slowly in the hyperspace channel. Time came to the morning of the next day. Chen Ming had just finished washing up when he found that Bai Quan was already sitting on the sofa next to the repaired classroom, looking at the copy that even if there was a problem, the report was delivered without fail even when he was outside the door. When Bai Quan noticed Chen Ming coming, he immediately stuffed a copy of the report to him. When Chen Ming saw the content of the report, he immediately understood why Bai Quan did not let him jump directly yesterday. The content of the report was very clear. It was mainly the impact of the attack they had suffered yesterday. After all, it was originally a secret operation for Chen Ming and Bai Quan to go out at this time to submit research materials and verify with Lu Wei whether Chen Ming had the ability to control the colony. But now that an accident has occurred, Bai Quan naturally exposed the matter. And he directly sent the officially certified damage report and most of the video footage of the whole incident to the supervision department at the headquarters. The door was opened, and they were asked to intervene. The reason was that Lu Wei had done something again to obstruct Chen Ming's verification of the colony's ability. At the same time, Bai Quan also used a little trick to have people privately release the damage assessment report and some videos that would not expose Chen Ming's psychic effects to help the outside world confirm that this was not fake news. Then, according to today's report, the public opinion of the outside world was of course blown up. No wonder Lao Wu contacted him urgently last night to ask him something, And the factory director also called him to ask him how the situation was. Although this news involved the relationship between the real psychic and the psychic, ordinary people did not know too much about the content in the public opinion. Just like the previous gambling agreement, most people just relied on the negative public opinion about Bai Quan gave people a basic understanding of Bai Quan, and then after Bai Quan's public opinion reversed, they also had an understanding of the gambling agreement. The specific content of the gambling is not well known to outsiders. But this is enough, because among those attacked by Zhuojing this time, Bai Quan is a lieutenant general. Zhuojing, attack, lieutenant general. Put these three keywords together, the matter cannot be small. Although the external news said that Zhuojing was quickly dealt with, there were no casualties except Zhuojing, and the number of Zhuojing personnel deaths exceeded 300, and the fleet was completely destroyed. But the fact that a small group of Zhuojing fleet suicide attacked the warships on the mission of the military was originally a slap in the face of the 14th Corps. Although it was the face of the entire 14th Corps that was slapped outside. But inside the 14th Corps, it was definitely not Bai Quan's face that was slapped. The reason lies in what Bai Quan said to Chen Ming before. The entire trajectory of their actions after they came out was only known to the two of them and the people on Lu Wei's side. Bai Quan, an ordinary person, could not risk his life to provoke a psychic. Many people also know that Chen Ming and Zhuojing have a grudge. Zhuojing wants to kill Chen Ming as soon as possible, and Chen Ming is even less likely to do such a thing under such circumstances. So who leaked the information about Chen Mingquan's whereabouts? Many people must have the answer in their hearts. Of course, there are also doubts. Some people say that Chen Ming is afraid of going to the colony for actual testing next, so he deliberately directed and acted in such a play. But whether it is self-directed or self-acted, you can see it by watching the video released by Bai Quan. People with ability can naturally see all the videos. Of course, you can also understand that Chen Ming is really fighting for life and death. And Bai Quan dared to directly report the matter to the supervision department. So this matter could not be done by Bai Quan himself. All kinds of factors are superimposed together, and the situation is instantly one-sided. Relying on 2 documents and a video, Lu Wei was forced to issue a statement overnight, saying that it was definitely not them who did it, and they would definitely cooperate with the investigation to find out who leaked the information and caused the problem. Lu Wei and others took the initiative to admit their mistakes, but it seemed that they also kicked the ball back in disguise. That's about all the things that happened yesterday. The follow-up will depend on today's situation. Bai Quan's intention of not letting Chen Ming jump directly to the destination yesterday must be to let the matter continue to ferment for a few days. If this matter is not handled well in one day, the pressure from all sides will definitely increase day by day. Who is the most anxious now? It is definitely not Chen Ming and Bai Quan. After thoroughly understanding the situation, Chen Ming asked Bai Quan next to him, "So how should we deal with this matter later?" "We don't have to deal with it," Bai Quan said as if the matter was over. The trouble of assassinating the lieutenant general and the psyker lies with the opponent. It is the opponent who has to consider how to deal with it, but who dares to deal with this kind of matter in private? Don't forget that the previous matter has not been completely cleared up yet. When these 2 matters come together, this is no longer something that can be solved by asking them to self-examine. Someone from the headquarters will come over to deal with this matter soon, so we don't have to worry about it. With such a big pot, a lot of people have to be taken out to investigate. All we have to do is watch. Oh. Chen Ming nodded and asked, "Then how will they respond?" "You have to ask them how they responded, but if I were here, I would not do anything about this matter. I would fully cooperate with the supervisor in the investigation and hand over the people who should be handed over." It was involved in Zhuojing's affairs twice in a row, and one of them was directly related to my life. Anyone who has the idea of taking a chance on it will definitely get bloodshed. Chen Ming has experienced the previous things and probably understands the reasons. These are the rules within the system. But there is one thing he still hasn't figured out. Actually, I still don't understand why they want to assassinate us. Bai Quan asked, "Who said they want to assassinate us? How could they not know the rules after being around for so many years?" "There are definitely people who just want to cause some trouble for us, make us feel disgusted, falsely accuse us of not being good at keeping secrets, etc. so they leaked our information to some people. It would be okay for them if they only attract ordinary left paths, because such left paths cannot threaten us at all, but they can disgust us. Zhuojing must have been dealt with on the spot. Even if we don't deal with it, Zhuojing will definitely rush up and deal with it himself. There will be no left for these Zhuojing. Then they can argue with us about who leaked the secret. It's quite troublesome to think about it. But in the end, I'm afraid they didn't expect that the psyker from Zhuojia would be attracted in the end, so the problem is huge. It's actually not difficult to find out who the person who leaked the information is. Only a few people may know, and each of these people is related to the person at the top of them. So I estimate that there will be results in this matter within 3 days. Just watch. The results shouldn't disappoint. Bai Quan threw away the terminal in his hand and was about to get up to prepare today's lesson plan when he suddenly sat down again and said to Chen Ming, "By the way, although we were delayed a little on the way, we should be almost there tomorrow night. It's the place responsible for testing your research data. Before handing over the data, we have to meet with Lu Wei. I'll tell them then." Okay. Also, the results of Lu Wei's punishment came out yesterday. They were not included in the report. I'll just tell you now. Lu Wei received 3 disciplinary sanctions within our 14th Legion. One violation is illegally obtaining administrator rights of a simulation device. Another violation is illegally using administrator rights to stop a formal recorded public battle. And the third violation is destroying your research data. The 3 violations and the Zhuojing incident broke out later, causing him to be severely fined and directly lowered by 2 levels. I was sentenced to 6 months of compulsory labor and my monthly salary was reduced. Chen Ming basically didn't listen to what he said next. After all, the punishment for wages and voluntary labor was not painful, and the main thing was the punishment of lowering it by 2 levels. He remembered that Lu Wei seemed to be a major general before. If he lowered his rank by 2 levels, Lu Wei seemed to be a colonel now. Although Lu Wei did not go to jail in the end, he was probably better off going to jail after falling from general level to school level. This even means that Lu Wei is now on the same level as him. Chen Ming is not yet a member of the 14th Army Corps, but an external temporary tactical instructor with treatment equivalent to that of a colonel. Lu Wei fell to the same level as him. No matter how you look at it, you will be happy.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.